Hello, YouTube friends. I am so excited to be here with my dear friend, fear tackler, and amazing author, Michelle Polar. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, everybody.
Yay. Okay, so I've known Michelle for many, many years. She speaks on huge stages. She inspires audiences everywhere. She's also a viral video sensation, which is where you might know her. Michelle, you conquered 100 fears in 100 days. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so in 2015, I moved to New York City, which was my dream since I was a little girl, and I was terrified. I was terrified living in New York. Like even though I was like fulfilling my dream, I was not really fulfilling my dream because I was in the city of my dreams, but I was not really living my life how I pictured it because I was terrified. I was so afraid of the subway, of like the amount of people, of the competition. Also, I was very intimidated by New York, of high buildings, snowstorms, so much going on. And I come from Venezuela. I always, which is a very dangerous country. So people are like, what do you need to leave Venezuela to face your fears if Venezuela is so dangerous? But the truth is that in Venezuela, I lived in a bubble. So I was very protected throughout my entire life, and that's why I also left. It was very dangerous to be there, and I wanted to be free, right? And but I lived with like my fears for 19 years. It's hard to suddenly just let go of that and be free. You can't, right? It's in your head already. You're used to living with fear. So from Venezuela, I moved to Savannah, Georgia, which is a small town, and I felt very protected. Still very fearful person, but it was my comfort zone. Savannah is so cute. If you've never been, I highly recommend it. And
Beautiful.
then, yeah, so beautiful. And then I moved to Miami. And Miami is also very perfect. Everything is like, the palm trees and the beach and the mall. And I felt very protected as well living in Miami, except that I don't like driving. So I hated having to drive everywhere, and I avoided that a lot. But then I moved to New York, such a busy city, so much people, so many people. It was like crazy. And so it is exactly what I was expecting, but I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know how to handle myself. I remember, I will never forget the first time that I was on the subway by myself. That was a terrifying experience for me. I remember I was with my husband because we moved together, and he's like, okay, Michelle, this is it. Now you take this subway and I take the other one. And we were right in front of each other. And then it went in different directions. Like I went north and he went south, and I saw him through the window. It was like a movie scene. And I was shaking the whole time. But it was like an exciting fear, like I felt like I'm adulting or something. Like for the first time, I need to be responsible for myself. And so I was starting to face my fears little by little, but I was realizing that I was very limited by them still. And the reason why I moved to New York was to do a master's in branding. So I started going to school. I met friends. We became very good friends very fast. And they immediately they could tell how fearful I was. And they started challenging me to get outside of my comfort zone because they were very fearless, in my opinion. My friends, they were like, yeah, let's do this and let's do that. They never consider fear as much as I did. And I was always like, no, I better just go home. It's already 10 p.m. and I don't want to be alone by myself at night, out here. And they were alone by themselves at night. They didn't even care. They were just having fun, enjoying life to the fullest. We're in our 20s, we're doing a master's, we're in New York City. And so they started pushing me to get outside of my comfort zone and conquer some small fears. Like, for example, this will sound very silly, but I remember one time there was an exhibition at the MoMA and the museum, and I was like, oh, I'm so sad that you guys already went and Adam is not into that, so I guess I'll never go. And they're like, go by yourself. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, that never even crossed my mind. I was like, resigned. I'm not going. Everybody went already without me. And they're like, no, Michelle, we actually want to challenge you to go by yourself. This is serious. If you don't do it, then we'll be disappointed. And I was like, oh my God. And so I did it. I went by myself. I was so scared at the beginning, and then I enjoyed it more than you can imagine. Like I realized that I like going by myself to places, even more museums, because I get to actually enjoy the moment and sink in. So when I was doing my master's in branding, this is a long story, by the way, that I'm telling.
I love it. We got all the time.
Okay, cool. So I was doing my master's, and one of the assignments was to do a 100-day project of our choice. We had to choose one thing to do repeatedly for 100 days in a row. And this is a very popular project now, but it wasn't then. Actually, that in 2015 was the first year that this project happened globally over Instagram. So it was not a well-known project. And at the same time, I was doing it with my class. And, you know, at first I thought all of my ideas to do this 100-day project were related to branding, because that's what I was studying. And I'm like, this will be my portfolio piece to apply to branding jobs. And so I thought, let's do 100 logos. Let me analyze 100 brands. Let me eat at 100 restaurants and, you know, analyze their brand.
Also fun.
And yes, very, very expensive though, and fun. Every day at a different restaurant in New York. And then I realized I needed to do something that could be life-changing. So I had to do something that could have a greater impact in my life beyond branding. And so that's when I decided to tackle 100 fears in a period of 100 days. It just felt like the perfect project for the perfect moment in my life. I had the support also from my husband. And we didn't have kids. We still don't, but at that moment, so I felt like if I die, that's fine. You know, nobody will suffer that much other than my parents and my husband, but it's not like I'm leaving kids.
By the way, I was thinking you meant like perfect timing. We don't have kids. And you're like, so if I die, it would be okay, which is, those are two totally different avenues. Okay. I get where your head was at.
Yeah, no one depends on me at this point of my life. So it's like perfect. And so and not only I committed to facing my fears, since I was studying branding, I committed to branding fear. That was my idea. So I could also apply to jobs in branding with this project.
So basically you were like, hello, fear, I'm tackling you. Oh, yeah. I love it. Okay, by the way, so for those of you who have not seen some of her fear videos, and by the way, we conquered a fear together on the streets of New York, handing out flowers to strangers, which was so fun. And I will link to that somewhere here so you can go watch it. So what's amazing is all these fears were huge, big things like skydiving, but they were also smaller things like approaching strangers. And what I really hope in this video, and the reason why I wanted to bring you on, is as a high neurotic, I tend to have a lot of worry, a lot of fear, and I judge myself for my own fear. And one of the things you say in your book, which I love, is we're not talking about being fearless. We're talking about managing and understanding our fear. So could you walk me through the 7 core fears? This was my favorite part. So you can see, everyone, I like love this. I have like so many notes. So this is I was so excited when I read this because it helped me dive a little bit deeper into my own fear. So you say there are 7 core fears, and could you walk us through them one by one?
Yes. So I have it right here.
While you find them, your book is so beautiful. Even the book itself is inspiring. Like everything is just gorgeous. Okay, walk us through these. We are ready.
All right. So first, can I tell you, before I tell you the 7 fears, how did I get to them?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I started facing all these fears, and towards, I guess, the middle of the project, I started realizing that many of the fears felt the same. I was like, when I'm going to do my piercing, and then when I'm going to get a Brazilian wax, and I'm going to try acupuncture, all of those kind of feel the same. I have the same feeling when I'm even as I'm walking towards the places to do the fears. And then I'm like, and when I, for example, dance in the middle of Times Square by myself, like no one's watching, and I what else I did in terms of embarrassment. Like offer free hugs to random people in the street. All of these things, they kind of feel like the same, like more silly, more playful, still scary. And then what I did is I started writing all of my fears in post-its. So I used a lot of post-its, 100 of those, to just write them down, and I started putting them together like in clusters. And I ended up having 7 different clusters. And that's where the 7 fears come from. And I have here pain.
Wait. We have to pause for a second. If you are watching this video, I have a challenge for you. I want you to get out Post-its, and I want you to just brain dump, write everything you're afraid of, everything you're nervous about, down to I don't want to go on my Zoom call with a pimple, to I don't want to move, to asking someone out. All of your fears, I want you to write them down. And then I want you to actually group them just like Michelle did. Before you even hear about these 7 core fears, I want, as you think about them, are there similarities between them? Because something you said earlier in your beautiful story, your lead up, is that because of your upbringing, because you were raised in Venezuela, some of these patterns are entrenched. Like they're so almost comfortable. It's almost comfortable to be afraid. And so I want you to think about those different fears, if there's different comfort with them or different things they trigger. Okay, go ahead now.
All right. So if you're done writing down your fears, you can continue watching. Now, so these are the 7 fears according to my post-its. Pain, danger, embarrassment, rejection, loneliness, lack of control, and disgust.
Yes.
And one thing I realized is that I was facing, for example, this was really helpful in order to finish the project, because I was like, oh, I faced a lot of fears in the area of embarrassment and rejection. Let me face more in the area of loneliness and lack of control, because I don't have enough. And then I also started understanding that there are some of those clusters that are easier for me to face than others.
Like what?
And so I started ranking them as well. And that is another exercise that I would like you, person watching this video, to do. So it is an exercise I included in my book. I have the 7 fears and a line next to them for you to rank them. So for example, in my case, I am very afraid of loneliness. That is one of my biggest fears, and lack of control. Because and I can't tell you exactly why, but I know that for the first 7 years of my life I needed glasses, and my parents didn't know that. And so I was very afraid of getting lost. My deep fear was to not be with my parents, and then I wouldn't find them again. So I remember when my therapist asked me one time, a long time ago, like 9 years ago or so, she asked me, can you remember your earliest memory of fear? And now that's how I start all of my talks, with that question, my earliest memory of fear, because I could remember. It took me a while, but I could remember. So I asked you watching, can you remember your earliest memory of fear? In my case, was to walk down the aisle as a flower girl. I remember that fear clearly, because I was afraid to get to the end of the aisle and not find my mom or my dad. And that ties back to the fact that I needed glasses clearly, and nobody knew. And so I was afraid of getting lost. And that's a fear that I still have today. That's why I don't like to drive. I'm terrified of actually driving, getting lost, and not being able to find my way back. And that's the same reason why I don't like to be by myself. I feel very vulnerable when I'm by myself.
So I would love to point out some science here that I just sort of began to understand how this works. So basically in the brain, your brain is very efficient. And so it wants to create what are called basically superhighways for experiences, because then it makes it faster. So by the way, from ages 0 to 2, your brain is creating the most superhighways. And that's because you're learning everything: language, eating, clothing, walking. Then from 2 to 7 is the next phase of superhighway creation. 2, it peaks, and then it begins to go down. From like 7 to 13 or 14, you don't have much. And then at 13 or 14, it starts again for reproduction, for flirting, for learning dating. What's really interesting about this is what your brain is doing is it's doing what's called myelination, which means that when your synapses connect, it creates a thick myelin sheath, which is like a fat, so that the circuit can travel really fast. So if something happens from 0 to 7 years old, it will create these really fast superhighways. You're myelinating a lot. And so your early experience, and if you're watching this and you're like, yes, I had a lot of early experiences where you didn't have glasses yet, your myelination was happening when you couldn't see well. So you were afraid of getting lost. You were afraid of not finding people. You didn't literally feel sure-footed in the world. That created these very, very myelinated superhighways, so that now when you're much older, those highways are still there. And that's why they trigger so quickly and so easily with driving or walking in New York.
Definitely. Yeah. No, that sounds on point.
So
And mhm.
my question is, and this is what I was really excited to ask you, is so you do these 100 days, they go totally viral, it really inspires people. People are like, oh my gosh, I want to conquer some of my fears. Do you feel less afraid now, or do you know how to better handle your fears now?
It's hard to tell because I still have a lot of fears.
Mhm.
Like, I still go through fear. I feel more than other people around me. Like, fear is a huge, it's what determines many of my actions, but now I don't like intentionally allow fear to determine my actions. In fact, every time I caught fear being in the way of my one of my decisions, I need to understand if I'm making this decision based on fear or based on something real, or what is it. And the other day I read a comment from someone that already finished reading my book,
Mhm.
and she said, now after reading your book, I'm more aware of the decisions I'm making and the reason why I'm making the decisions, and I can clearly identify when fear is dictating one of those decisions, and I feel now empowered, and I feel more in control of my life, because now I can identify. Before, it was just like, no, you would just make up excuses not to
Yes.
face certain fears, and now you're like, that excuse is my fear talking. And
Mhm.
so just reading that is like, that's exactly how I felt after facing my 100 fears. Like, I still have fear, but now I can identify when I'm making a choice based on fear, and then I can make a decision like based on that. So I don't know, I still have a lot of fears, but I have to tell you that I think my confidence is at a very different level than it was before, because I've overcome so many things already. I proved to myself that I'm stronger than I thought. And so yes, I'm still fearful, but I feel like, yeah, confidence is at a different level for sure.
And also, by the way, like, I think that your confidence is contagious. We've been friends for a number of years. We've gotten to be speaking at the same conferences, and I feel at ease around you. And I think that that is also a mark of confidence, that your confidence in yourself is inspiring. And I didn't know you before your 100 fears, but at least now I feel that your confidence is very inspiring, and hopefully people watching feel the same way.
Yes, thank you.
So I want to ask you about, and I'm curious what you're going to say. So I'm a high neurotic. So I not only have fears, I also worry a lot.
Mhm.
When you think about fears versus worry versus even anxiety, is there a difference? Is there a way that you think about them differently? How do you are you also a worrier?
Let me think. That's a really good question. Let me tell you. You're good with questions, Vanessa.
Look, my job is asking good questions. That's my job.
Yeah, you're doing a good job. So, I believe that fear is the anticipation of something negative happening to us or someone that we love or something in our life. And so, yes, that sounds very similar to the definition of worrying, right? And like, I grew up with a mom that she's a warrior. She worries for everything. Everything's going to go wrong,
Mm.
like, and even when you tell her a good news, then she will find how that can turn into bad news.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I got a book deal, mom. Oh, now who's going to write your book? Like, that's a reason to worry now. And I'm like, let's celebrate.
Yeah.
And so growing up with a mom that worries so much made me more of an optimistic person, just because I wanted to be a little bit contradictory to her reaction to life.
Yeah.
And for example, I came up with this question that have been changing so many people's lives because it's so helpful at the time to face a fear. And it's, instead of asking yourself what's the worst that could happen, you know it, you don't,
Ask yourself,
ask yourself
what's the best that could happen?
yes, I wish I could have the page of that, of my book, that has that question, because it's like the prettiest page in the entire book, because I
Circled that
told the
page.
team,
I circled
I'm
that.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
like,
Oh
team, you
yeah.
need to make this page the most beautiful in the entire book. People need to Instagram this quote every 2 seconds. Now, what's the best that can happen? And I have to tell you, that question came to me as a reaction to one of my mom's worry scenarios. One day she called me and she's like, Michelle, I need to prepare dinner for 10 people, but I'm worried that they won't bring me the ingredients on time, and then the people won't show up. And what if they show up and they're not hungry, and then they won't eat it? And then she starts creating this chain of negative things that will happen that have not happened. And she's already suffering because of something that hasn't happened. And at that point, she went on and on for like 10 minutes, just expressing her fears. And then I'm like, what if you get the food on time? What if they all come and show up? What if they are very hungry? What if they love the food? What if everything goes right? What is the best that can happen? And then she stopped talking for a second and she's like, okay, that is also a possibility. So let's see. Next day, she calls me in the morning. She's like, Michelle, the best that could happen happened. Everything happened according to plan. Everything went right. You were so right. We need to use this question more often. And that's why it's the most important page in my entire book.
Okay. So you have to, and everyone who's watching, if that resonates with you, write that question down, put it on a Post-it note, and put it right on your monitor, like right next
or on your forehead. No,
on,
but somewhere you can see it, not your forehead.
Well, you could put it on your forehead if you're doing video, because then you'll see it. Otherwise, I want to see it. You can even put it above your camera, right? Like right there. And that's because I think that it is a reframe. And the way that I always try to think about worry is, I realized I used to worry as a way to prevent bad things from happening. Like I always thought, the more I worry about it, the less likely it is that a bad thing will happen. Oh, yes. I love it. I can see that now. I can see it. So you have to leave it up there the whole video. No, I'm just joking. I won't make you. Oh, that's where you should put it. Look at
there.
That. Now, and now we
can't read it.
We are just like, we are so creative. Air high five. Air high five, Michelle. Air high five. I like it. So when you think about worry, I think that I tend to think about it as an investment in failure prevention, right? The more I worry, the less likely a bad thing will happen. That's actually not how worry works. In fact, I really like Michelle's reframing of it, which is, instead of thinking about the worst thing that could happen, think about the best thing that could happen. I also love one thing that you say in your book, which I found really proactive and positive, was you have this very, very simple formula here. More challenges equals more to look forward to. And that was also really helpful to me, because I think that sometimes what happens if you're a worrier or if you're anxious is you're like, the more challenges I have, the more that could go wrong. But the way that you reframe it is, no, the more challenges that are the right challenges, that are the right things in your life, the more you have to look forward to. And that's a way of beating anxiety. Did I get that right?
Yeah, actually, my entire story, I think, with fear and self-help started right after getting married. So I got married at 23 in October. And in December, I started experiencing panic attacks, and I had no idea what they were. I was just feeling bad. And I'm like, am I going to die? Like, is something wrong with my body? And my mom, who's a psychoanalyst, was with me, visiting me in Miami. And she's like, I think you're having a panic attack. I'm like, what? I didn't even know what a panic attack was. I thought it was like an expression of someone going like, oh, I am having a panic attack, like an exaggeration. I didn't know it was like a physical feeling that you get. And so it's like, you should see a therapist. And because she's a therapist, like, therapy in my family is very welcome. Like, it's normal. But I've never seen a therapist before, because I didn't need a therapist at any point before that. And so I was like, okay, but I need the best right now. because I need to figure out what's happening. I can't continue going through this. And so I went to a really, really great therapist in Miami, and really quickly we realized that I was running out of challenges in my life at such young age. At 23 years old, I already had a beautiful apartment, 2 bedroom, 2 bathroom, married to the man of my dreams. I had a really good job in advertising as an art director. Basically, I had everything I dreamed of. Like, all of my check boxes were checked. I just needed to have kids, maybe buy a home eventually, and have grandchildren and die. Those were my check boxes. And I was like, that's it. This is life. This is living life to the fullest. Like, I checked the boxes, and now what? And then my therapist like, I thought you had a dream of moving to New York. And I'm like, yeah, but I already got married. We have to settle down. And she's like, you're 23. You can still make that dream happen and then have kids later. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't consider that.
So, by the way, this is leading me perfectly into the last set of challenges I want to do, which is questioning yourself, questioning your assumptions. I think that if you think about your next 30 days, your next 60 days, is there anything that you're looking forward to? Are there challenges that you can reframe that you're looking forward to? And then if you're not, are there assumptions that you've made that you can't make change, or that you're done with something, or that part of your life is done? So what I want to end on, Michelle, is I want to give everyone the 3 questions. You have these in one of your chapters of your book. I love that you have really, really good exercises. These are just 3 of them. I'm going to issue them to you, the viewer, to answer them yourself, and then we are going to answer one ourselves. Okay? Are you ready? Okay. And this is, by the way, the exact question that you just mentioned. One of them is in here. Here we go. Ready? Are you ready to write these down? You can pause the video to answer them if you want as well. If you could go back to school and choose a different career, what would you choose? If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be? If you could surround yourself with anyone in the world, who would you like to surround yourself with? So I want you to think about those 3 questions for you, and I really highly encourage you to do all 3. But Michelle, we get to pick one that we like, and we get to do each. Do you want to start?
Ooh, no, you start.
No? Okay. Okay, I will start. So funny thing here is, if I had to go back and choose a different career, which I feel like I have a dream job, I love my career, but a career I've always been curious about was after I took the intelligence test. So Howard Gardner has a theory that there are 9 intelligences. And for a long time, I was really hard on myself that I wasn't good at math. I wasn't good at spatial reasoning. And his argument is, you don't have to be. Usually you only have 1 or 2. And so after I took that test, which was actually quite recent, a couple of years ago, I found out that my number 1 is linguistic, which is not that much of a surprise. I write books, I'm on YouTube, I love words. I think it would have been amazing to have gone to school for speech therapy. I think that I find that language is a gift. And so now that I have a 2-year-old daughter, and I'm helping her with her language, it's really amazing how children learn language. And I think it would have been really interesting to explore that aspect, maybe as an add-on to my career of giving people the gift of language. And secretly, sorry, this is a long answer, Michelle, hopefully I'm not boring you. Secretly, I've always wanted to start a nonprofit studying literacy and how we can teach literacy to adults. I think that our literacy rates in this country are extremely low. And so I've always wanted to know, is there a research-backed way to teach literacy faster, to teach adults how to read? Because once you learn how to read, your entire world opens up. So if I could add one thing, I would want to study literacy and speech pathology.
Love it.
All
So
right,
if I had
your
to,
turn. Yeah.
so if I had to answer the same question, so I went to school to study graphic design and art direction, and then I did a master's in branding. I think that combination is really powerful today because it helps me, it sets me apart from other speakers because I get to brand myself, do my own material, do my own videos, do everything that I need to, so I don't depend on anybody. And every vision I have in my head, I can easily translate that into different mediums, and that's really helpful for me. But 2 careers that would have helped me today a lot: first, psychology, which I considered a lot, but I was like, in my mind, when you study psychology, you then have to become a psychologist. and listen to other people's problems. And I'm like, no, I don't want to listen to people's problems every day of my life. Like that sounds something like painful for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and my mom does that, and I'm like, she's filled with problems from other people all the time, wants to talk about them, and no, it's not for me. But now I realize that when you study psychology, you don't need to become a psychologist. Now you know all of this amazing information and how the brain works, how behavior works and humans works. And then it would have been great to incorporate more of that into my book, but gladly I have my mom. So there's a lot of psychology
Mm-hmm.
into this book, and it's because of my mom, my therapist, and my best friend who's a therapist. So I like, even though I couldn't study psychology, but I surround myself with a lot of therapists, and that's so helpful for me in what I'm doing today.
Mm-hmm.
That, and also PR. Come on, I suck at doing PR. So I'm
Is
like,
anyone good at it?
Michelle.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, if you study PR, I guess. So I was like, I should have studied PR. So those are the two things.
Oh man, we are so similar in so many ways. I considered those alternate careers as well. So I really, really encourage you watching to answer these 3 questions for yourself, to set up some challenges that you're actually looking forward to. Please, please, please pick up this amazing book. If you're struggling with anxiety or fear or worry, it's a beautiful, systematic, gentle approach to worry and fear. And it's not about being fearless. It's about conquering your fears in a way that actually serves you and understanding your choices. And so for that, I really found tremendous relief while reading it. And also just you as a person, I adore you. I think you're so authentic. I'm so grateful that you're willing to share all these vulnerabilities, because it makes me feel less alone with my vulnerabilities. So please, please pick up Michelle's book. Follow her on Instagram. We're going to have all the links below this video. Michelle, I want to thank you so much for being on with us today.
It's my pleasure. This went by too fast, Vanessa. I know that we can talk for hours because we've done it.
And one day I'm going to get you to move to Austin. Just one day.
I know.
You're coming to
That's
Austin.
on our list.
Okay.
It's on our list. Okay. Yes, we'll be there.
Okay, good. For everyone watching, I hope this helped a little bit. We're going to have a ton of links below the video. And thank you so much for watching. Bye.
Thank you.
Hey, I want to tell you one more thing. You are amazing. The question is, do you know how to share it? I'd love to help. I save my very best tips for my insider subscribers. Subscribe for free at scienceofpeople.com. I know your inbox is sacred, so I promise to send you only emails you will love. One more thing, be sure to tap the bell next to the subscribe video to get alerted when my next video comes out.